Well, hello, and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWire TV interview. I'm joined today by Matt Barr. He's the Chief Product Officer at eftpos. Welcome to the program.
Alex, great to be on your show.
Thank you. Great to have you. Now, Matt, eftpos has just announced that some of the nation's most iconic banks, retailers and FinTechs, including Commonwealth Bank, National Australia Bank, Coles, Woolies, As You Pay, Beemit and Merchant Warrior, are partnering with eftpos to support the rollout of your new QR payments platform called eQR. So can you please tell us about eQR and why now was the right time to introduce a QR code payments system?
Yeah, look, it's a super exciting moment for us. Obviously, we've been working on this for a while. Look, I think Australia actually understands what a QR code is now. And 18 months ago, no one had a clue. But we were cooking this up actually before, unfortunately, COVID hit us. And we think of this as a real upgrade in how Australians pay. And there's not a problem per se in payments, but there's actually a problem in payment experiences. And what we mean by that, it's actually the inclusion recognition of loyalty within a payment. It's the inclusion of an offer as part of a payment experience. It's actually the ability to pay with a gift card and pay with some points and put the balance on a credit or debit card. And it's about putting in, capturing an electronic receipt at the end of that experience. So if you have to return something, it's really easy to find that receipt and give that piece of electronics back to the retailer. And so it's actually the integration of all of those elements of the retail experience, which is really what we're doing. That's actually the problem to solve. And so, no, we think Australia is absolutely ready for this upgrade in retail payments. The fact that we've got such a terrific list of partners part of this announcement is obviously an indication of how much support we've got for the strategy. No, so we're super excited about it.
So, Matt, consumers know about using the PayWave and the Tap and Go or Tap and Pay systems of credit cards and debit cards, and how it's been available with the eftpos with Tap and Go through debit for some time, including through services such as Apple Pay. So what apps will consumers use to scan a QR code and have this link to their existing credit cards or debit cards or bank accounts?
Yes, maybe talk about it at the outset versus where we think this will end up over time. So at the outset, we've announced in the press release that Beemit, so it's a P2P payment wallet that's has been in the market for some years now, and eftpos actually acquired that business last November. Mm-hmm. So that experience will be upgraded to support the ability to pay in retail stores through leveraging a QR code. But we're also expecting that other, say, big retailers may well want to bring their own apps and upgrade them to be able to support retail payments through that app. It's also, if you look in other overseas market, banks have upgraded their banking applications to support QR-based payments. So we think that there's going to be a number of these wallets out there over time, but certainly out of the gate, it's Beemit will be where consumers will first be able to experience it.
Sure. And so how soon will the eQR payment codes appear at retail? I mean, I'm imagining that if you go into the self-service queues at Coles and Woolies, you're given the option to pay via credit or debit, and there will appear one of these eQR codes on the screen. And also then what happens if you choose to go into the manned checkout areas where, someone's scanning it for you? Will there be something on the screen that you'll hold your phone next to and just tap it or scan it?
Yeah, look, by design, actually, it's probably one of the real big advantages of this kind of technology is that the experience can be the same in any flow, if it's a self-service or manned or online or even on a tablet. So some merchants look at that and go, well, actually, that's a good way to just have a consistency across my different channels. So that's important. And then it's really up to the retailers of when they think they'll be able to deploy it in the different channels. There's actually a whole bunch of complexity as we're learning when you think about the different technologies, be it self-service or manned or online. And so I think we'll see it turn up on those channels at different times, but our strategy is it becomes ubiquitous and becomes the preferred way to pay over time. So I think that kind of gives a clue to where it's heading, but I guess contactless took some years to scale, so QR will also take some years to scale.
And if I'm using my smartphone to order something and the eQR payment option comes up, will it then offer to send me to the Beemit app, for example, to finalize that payment, or how will that work?
From a customer experience, we've actually tried to think about how Australians interact with QR codes today, because effectively COVID and the checking in at different venues is how Australians have got familiar with it. So we're leveraging back on that experience. So you have to scan the eQR code with your native camera. If you don't have an app installed that supports it, you'll get directed to a site to be able to download an app that will. So that choice will be presented. If you have an app installed that supports it, so if you do have the BMAP on your device, then it will launch that app straight away. So that element of experience we think is really important. So we have to spend a lot of time trying to make sure that is really slick. So I think there'll be ways that we just make it easy for consumers to discover it. And I think that's the trick with any good technology, is making it really convenient.
Sure. And do you think you'll see the eQR codes in buses and taxis and other forms of transport that people can scan?
Absolutely. In fact, actually, we think it's a terrific use case. If you look at how contactless is used in transit today, in a transit authority, there's amazing investment in turnstile infrastructure. So to create that barrier so that you can scan in and the transit authority knows you've scanned in. But if you look at some other instances, the scan on, scan off, you could do that on a poster. Like, it doesn't actually have to be at a turnstile. So we actually think this technology would enable much lower cost transit environments than some of those that are being used in Australia today. So we think it's a terrific use case for contactless. So no, I don't think you could give me an example where I don't think we could deploy this technology and the benefits of it.
Yeah, well, another example of that would be where you see buskers. I mean, I've seen them with the WeChat and Alipay QR codes in the past 2 or 3 years, or I've seen them on these viral videos where people can go blip with their phone and give a donation that way. So I'm sure we'll start seeing that too. You should engage a busker or two to get them to kickstart the whole process, in Martin Place or somewhere in Victoria, in Melbourne, once it's all sort of,
that's a terrific idea, Alex. As long as you don't want a commission on that, we might do something like that. I like that idea too.
Well, why not get it out there? Get somebody who's really good at what they craft, even if it's magicians or the acrobats. You see these incredible things with huge crowds around them, and instead of selling CDs or whatever it is, you got the little code there and off they go. Now, is this something that you think you'll be rolling out internationally, or is Australia your main focus?
We're certainly starting domestically. Obviously, we're a domestic business process debit transactions in Australia, but we're actually part of a global network of domestic debit businesses. So we are comparing notes. Each market has their own dynamics, but the establishing interoperability between these networks isn't actually that hard. I think it's just a phase in the journey. So our expectation is that over time we'll be knitting together these QR networks globally, so that you will be able to take your BMAP or whatever app has been upgraded to support technology here, and we will have established interoperability agreements with some of these other QR networks, so that Australians will be able to travel and use those apps that they're familiar with here. And as you said in reverse, there are in Australia today there are some. You referenced a couple of the Asian brands that have leveraged QR codes for some years, and so there is acceptance into Australia. So you can kind of get a sense that there's going to be that kind of those interconnection arrangements put up across the world. Sure.
And what about the costs for the merchants and I guess consumers to use the eQR system? Is it going to be the same as what is charged now for eftpos, or is there a different structure?
Look, eftpos is a low-cost debit network today, and so we think we offer terrific value to merchants where consumers are using eftpos. Through this infrastructure, obviously, we can process debit transactions. We can't process credit debit, but the network will actually, or the platform will be designed to switch out to those networks where we can't support the processing of the transaction. And it's actually just going to be the normal cost of acceptance for those merchants. So it's not. Merchants won't be having to sign up to a new service from eftpos to do this. We'll be working with their banking partners, their acquiring partners to power up this option, and then it'll just flow through the normal transaction economics is our expectation that merchants will be signing up to. So there's no new costs or anything. It's really just supporting new experiences.
And part of the benefit of eftpos and I guess of using these eQR codes is that the fees go to an Australian company rather than going to US or Asian companies. So it sort of helps to keep the money in Australia to a degree.
Yeah, well, the eftpos reason for being is to do good for Australia. So we think having a platform that encourages the process of transactions here, creates great experiences for Australian consumers and merchants is definitely good for the country. So our purpose is really driving this when we looked around the world to find out, so what is the next generation of digital payments and how do we make that happen down here? So we're super excited to be kind of leading that challenge.
Yeah. And I guess this could also be integrated with buy now, pay later programs if they wanted to be able to scan the QR code at the point of purchase if it's in a retail or online situation.
That's certainly part of the thinking. So the QR infrastructure is really an acceptance infrastructure. We talk about Beam.it as being one of the consumer wallets that will leverage it, and we expect that there'll be other consumer apps that will leverage it. And I think the buy now, pay later sector is another example. I mean, getting merchants to accept you as a new way to pay is actually really hard work. Building out those merchant footprints. So if we can bring that network of merchants and have a fintech partner that wants to leverage it, fantastic idea. So part of the Beam.it purpose is to create that ecosystem of fintech partners, right? So we think that's part of how that all comes together, so that you can actually partner with the reach of Beam and the acceptance from eftpos through eQR and make some magic happen.
And it obviously helps to have partners like Coles and Woolies on board to really accelerate the rollout of this and acceptance of the system.
Exactly. If you looked at contactless, I think the technology had been in Australia for 5 or 6 years before Coles and Woolies kind of adopted it, and at that point it took off. So having the support with Coles and Woolies at this stage of our journey, as we're just getting started, fantastic for the prospects of the platform, but the momentum will be able to build, and we think it becomes a really powerful indication to the rest of the market to come and work with us, and we can build some great experiences for them as well.
Sure. So what is your final message to iTWire viewers and readers, and to retailers, banks, and your other customers and partners?
I think the final message would be we're kind of excited to be part of this new eftpos, which is here to do really good for Australia and help to digitise the country. I mean, we see our role as being at the centre of Australia's digital future, and I think this investment, this announcement, along with everything else we'll be doing, is real proof that we're here to be that partner and to help kind of do good for Australia. So come give us a call. We want to work with you.
No worries. Well, Matt Barr, Chief Product Officer at eftpos, thank you very much for your time. I hope you do roll it out and make a big media event for some buskers and coffee shops and those sorts of things. Make it a real sort of party to get people out there and start using the system. And I hope we can talk again in the future.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thanks again, Alex.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.